Hello everyone, my name is Blake Scott, and today I will be discussing the history of video games and how we got here today. A good iconic game would be the game called Pong, made in 1972. This game was iconic in that while it was simplistic, it was also highly addicting for people that were in arcades as well as in homes with their families playing it on their everyday television. This game was unique in that it simulated the game table tennis by knocking the ball past your opponent and racking up points. Now, where it all started was by a nuclear physicist named William Higginbotham. His invention was called table tennis for two. This game was put right onto that screen right there. What William did was have an idea so that he may prove to his colleagues how much technology has advanced. He didn't quite realize this. He didn't realize the idea that he would create would spark everyone else's imagination for making something similar and branching out. Now this here is chess made in the 50s by a supercomputer that would see 4 moves ahead of its opponent. While it was made before Williams by a few years, it didn't spark everyone's ideas as Williams did. Now jumping ahead to 1962, we have the game called Space Wars, iconic in that it was a 2-player game that applied space physics with a limited amount of resources. You had to dodge debris and help out your other player. This here is what Space Wars looked like on their old computer. It was also very iconic for being the first game put on a computer. Jumping ahead a couple of years, we get to 1967. Ralph Baer finished his design for the first video game console called the Brown Box. Right here is what he finished it. He started the patent for it in 1966. This game was unique in that it was sold off to everyday American households and you could play it on your everyday TV. It was a 2-player game it was a 2-player console that had several games on it, depending on what switch you flipped, right there. Now, moving on to the 1970s, we have consoles that were put in arcades, such as Pong, that was made in 1972, which we've already talked about, and the game Maze Runner, that was put on computers. Maze Runner was unique in that it was the first puzzle / first-person shooter game, and it made everyone realize the unique value that first-person shooters had to the industry. Now, moving on to the 1980s, we have more colorful consoles and we have more colorful systems put in arcades. This one being Donkey Kong, which is the objective of the main protagonist, called Jumpman, later renamed Mario, to climb up these stairs while avoiding falling objects to get to the top objective. This one here is called Pac-Man, made a couple years before that, with a colorful design made by Tori Iwatawa to get all the pellets that were in the maze while avoiding 4 ghosts that would follow you throughout the maze. The more pellets that you ate, the more they would try to follow you. But you had a room where you could continue eating the pellets without having to fear being eaten by the ghost by eating the larger pellets, and you could also get extra points by eating the ghost while you have eaten this larger pellet. But the problem is, when you eat the ghost while you have this pellet, they will recover faster by going to their base. Oh, before that, I would like to say 2 years later, Mrs. Pac-Man came out, and it inspired people to make female protagonists for video games. Now we get into the late 80s to early 90s. Handheld games become much more popular because they're much more easy to carry around. They have several games that are quite cheap for their cartridges, and they become much more in color. This here is called a Game Boy, one of my personal favorites throughout my childhood. And now we've gotten to the early 2000s. Computer games have become more of a commodity, such as the sim games, mostly known for their simulation of regular life, but with added elements. You can add more family members, more friends, extra houses. You can change whatever you want inside the house. It also sparked more online communities. In 2003, the system online called Steam, not the Steam invented a couple years beforehand. No, the online invention of Steam was a platform for putting in video games, where you would normally buy games online, but on this platform you could get them for a sale, or in certain seasons you could get them for even a higher discount. Now, moving into 2003, we have the new invention of motion controls. While studied beforehand, it has only been put into play recently with the Wii U, in that it helped people get more active with its inventions, and it even got updated in 2009 with the Wii U Motion Plus. This here is the Wii, and this is the Wii controllers called the nunchucks because it has two controllers. While it might seem strange to have a controller in each hand, you can get used to it rather fast. Now moving into modern games, we have things like RPGs, which are called role-playing games, or MMOs, which are called Massive Multiplayer Online. But my example that I have here is called Skyrim, in that it's called a sandbox, where once you get out of the tutorial, you can go in any direction you want, and you can still have an adventure. There's always an objective that you can find no matter where you go. I would like future games like these to be made, and I hope that everyone here has experienced video games like me and hopes to pick up the hobby. If anything, I'm glad that you learned.
All right, buddy.
And your audience?
That was good.
And here is my audience.